My finger hovered over the send button. One click, and my resignation would be official. Outside the glass conference room, Chloe was frantically trying to explain to our largest client why their $2.3 million payment had vanished into the system. Alarms blared from every workstation. The main display showed the number in blood red, $7.8 million in losses, still climbing. Developers were shouting across the room, trying to trace the cascade of failures. Someone knocked over their coffee. Another engineer had their head in their hands. This was the disaster I'd warned them about for weeks. The disaster they'd called me resistant to change for predicting. I clicked send. My resignation went through just as another wave of transaction failures hit the system. Chloe's eyes found mine through the glass, panicked and pleading. I grabbed my bag, stepped into the elevator, and watched the chaos disappear as the doors closed. 5 years of my life, ending in the spectacular failure I'd tried desperately to prevent. Before we dive into how everything fell apart, hitting that subscribe button helps more than you might think. We're building something real here, working toward 5,000 subscribers who appreciate stories about what actually happens when ambition meets reality. If that resonates, you know what to do. My name is Erin Westfield, and for 5 years, I served as Senior Infrastructure Architect at Pinnacle Financial Technologies. That title meant I built the backbone systems that processed billions in transactions for our Fintech payment gateway platform. Banks, e-commerce giants, subscription services, they all relied on the infrastructure my team, and I developed, tested, and maintained. Growing up in a working-class neighborhood outside Detroit shaped how I approached everything. My father worked at an automotive plant for 28 years. My mother juggled 2 jobs while putting herself through nursing school. They taught me that respect isn't about titles or corner offices. It's about competence, integrity, and understanding that everyone's contribution matters. When I joined Pinnacle straight out of grad school, I started as a junior developer. I learned from people who'd forgotten more about distributed systems than most developers would ever know. I asked questions, admitted mistakes, and understood that technology serves people, not the other way around. That background, watching my parents work themselves to exhaustion, seeing how one unexpected expense could derail a family's budget, made me protective of the systems we built. Real people depended on their payments going through, their money being secure, their transactions completing without error. 5 years of 80-hour weeks, weekend deployments, and 3 a.m. emergency calls had transformed me from that uncertain junior developer into someone the CEO personally consulted before major decisions. At least, that's what I thought. The first crack in my reality appeared on a Tuesday morning in late September. Oliver Hartman, our CEO and founder, scheduled an all-hands meeting with 24 hours' notice. The company had grown from 40 employees when I started to nearly 300. We'd secured our Series C funding 8 months earlier, $180 million that valued Pinnacle at over $1 billion. The auditorium buzzed with speculation as we filed in. Acquisition rumors had circulated for weeks. Maybe Google, maybe PayPal, the possibilities seemed endless. Today marks a transformative moment in Pinnacle's journey, Oliver began, his voice carrying that practiced motivational speaker cadence. We're not just building software, we're building the financial infrastructure of tomorrow. And to lead us into that future, I'm making a strategic leadership change that combines vision, fresh thinking, and deep understanding of where technology is heading. My stomach tightened. Strategic leadership changes rarely meant good news for people who actually did the work. I'm thrilled to announce that Chloe Hartman will be joining Pinnacle as our new Director of Infrastructure and Platform Development. The room erupted in polite applause. Chloe walked onto the stage, 23 years old, wearing a designer blazer that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She'd completed her undergraduate degree at Yale, majoring in economics, then spent 2 years in a rotational program at her father's company, which mostly meant attending conferences and sitting in on strategy meetings. Her entire technical experience consisted of a 3-month internship at a mid-sized tech company where she'd allegedly led a mobile app redesign. I knew this because I'd looked up her LinkedIn profile within seconds of hearing her name. Director of Infrastructure and Platform Development. My role? Well, not officially my role. I'd been senior architect, technically a step below director. But I'd been performing director-level responsibilities for 18 months, ever since our previous director, Russell, left for Amazon. Oliver had told me the director position was frozen due to budget constraints, despite our $180 million in fresh funding. He'd assured me the promotion was coming, that I just needed to be patient, that my contributions were valued. Apparently, valued meant training the boss's daughter. After the all-hands meeting, Oliver's assistant informed me that I'd been assigned as Chloe's primary technical mentor. 2 weeks of knowledge transfer, starting immediately. The bitterness tasted metallic in my mouth, but I smiled and nodded. What else could I do? The first session took place in conference room 3 billion the next morning at 9 sharp. Chloe arrived 7 minutes late, carrying a vanilla latte and scrolling through her phone. She looked up, smiled with practiced politeness, and settled into the chair across from me. So, Aaron, right? Dad says you're the person who knows everything about our infrastructure. I'm familiar with the systems, yes. Great. I'm a fast learner, so this should be pretty straightforward. She pulled out a brand new MacBook Pro, still in its protective film. Where should we start? I'd prepared a comprehensive overview, our tech stack, architectural decisions, scaling challenges, security protocols, the works. I opened my laptop and pulled up the first presentation. Pinnacle's infrastructure processes an average of 47 million transactions daily across 14 time zones. We maintain a distributed database architecture with 6 regional clusters to ensure sub-minus 100 millisecond latency for 99% of requests. Our payment gateway integrates with 312 financial institutions worldwide, each with unique protocols, security requirements, and compliance standards. Chloe nodded, her fingers poised above her keyboard like she was about to take notes. Instead, she glanced at her phone as it buzzed. Sorry, just 1 second. She typed a quick response, then looked back up. Okay, so we process a lot of transactions, got it. How hard is it to, add new features? The question revealed a fundamental misunderstanding of what we did. Adding features to a payment processing system wasn't like adding a button to a website. Every change rippled through dozens of integrated systems, required extensive security audits, needed compliance approval from regulators in multiple countries, and demanded exhaustive testing because a single bug could cost millions. It depends on the feature, I said carefully. What kind of additions were you thinking about? Oh, I don't know specifically. I just mean, generally, how agile are we? Can we move fast and break things, or are we stuck in old-school development cycles? Move fast and break things. The Silicon Valley mantra that sounded inspiring in a dorm room but became terrifying when applied to systems that controlled other people's money. In payment infrastructure, breaking things means people don't get paid, businesses lose revenue, and we face regulatory penalties. I explained, keeping my tone neutral. We move as fast as we can while maintaining the reliability our clients depend on. Right, of course, but there's always room for innovation, Fresh perspectives. Fresh perspectives. She'd been here for 24 hours. We continued for another hour. I walked through our deployment pipeline, explaining our testing protocols, our rollback procedures, our incident response framework. Chloe nodded frequently, asked surface-level questions, and checked her phone 8 times. As we wrapped up, she stood and gathered her laptop. This is super helpful, Aaron. I can already see some areas where we might want to optimize. Dad mentioned you've been doing director-level work without the title. That must be frustrating. The comment landed like a slap disguised as sympathy. I focus on the work itself, I said. That's such a healthy attitude. Honestly, I told Dad he should have promoted you properly, but he thought bringing an outside perspective would be better for the company's growth trajectory. She smiled, apparently unaware that she'd just confirmed my suspicions. Anyway, same time tomorrow. The 2 weeks that followed tested every ounce of professionalism I'd developed. Day 3, Chloe asked why we couldn't just use blockchain to solve our scaling challenges. When I explained that blockchain technology was fundamentally unsuited for high-frequency payment processing, she suggested I might be resistant to innovation. Day 5. She proposed migrating our entire infrastructure to a new database system she'd read about in a TechCrunch article. The system had been released 6 weeks earlier and had exactly 0 implementations in production financial services. When I outlined the 18-month minimum timeline for that kind of migration, plus the regulatory approval process, she asked if I was always this negative about new ideas. Day 7. Chloe scheduled a meeting with our VP of Engineering, bypassing me entirely, to discuss modernizing our approach to development. That meeting resulted in an email to the entire engineering department announcing new agility initiatives that would accelerate our innovation cycle. The initiatives included reducing our code review requirements and shortening our testing windows. I requested a private conversation with Oliver. His corner office overlooked downtown Seattle's skyline, all glass and steel and carefully curated success. Photos of Oliver shaking hands with tech luminaries lined one wall. The other displayed his Stanford MBA diploma and several industry awards. Aaron, good to see you. How's the knowledge transfer going? That's what I wanted to discuss. Chloe is enthusiastic, but she lacks the fundamental technical background necessary for the director role. Some of her proposals could seriously compromise our infrastructure stability. Oliver leaned back in his ergonomic chair, his expression shifting from friendly to calculating. Chloe brings exactly what we need right now: bold thinking, willingness to challenge assumptions, executive presence. She's been around technology her whole life. Her godfather founded a unicorn. She understands the business side in ways that pure engineers sometimes miss. Understanding the business side is valuable, I acknowledged, but directing infrastructure development requires technical expertise. We're responsible for systems that process billions in transactions. One wrong decision could what, Aaron? I've been making decisions about this company for 7 years. We've never had a major outage. We've never lost client data. I think I know how to assess leadership capabilities. The dismissal stung, but I pressed forward. I'm not questioning your overall judgment. I'm raising concerns about a specific situation. Chloe suggested reducing our code review and testing protocols. That's dangerous. Our reliability is our primary competitive advantage. She's proposing we move faster. Every week we delay a feature is a week our competitors gain ground. Stripe ships new capabilities monthly. We're stuck in quarterly cycles. Stripe has 1,000 engineers and a decade of infrastructure maturity. We have 120 developers and a platform that's only 5 years old. Comparing our velocity to theirs is exactly the kind of thinking that keeps companies from breaking through to the next level. Oliver stood, signaling the conversation's end. I brought Chloe in to shake things up, to push us beyond our comfort zone. Give her a chance. You might learn something. Day 9 of knowledge transfer brought the first real crisis. Chloe had apparently spent the previous evening exploring the codebase and decided she understood enough to make suggestions directly to the development team. She'd posted in our engineering Slack channel at 11 p.m., proposing that we simplify our transaction validation logic by removing what she called redundant checks. The checks she'd identified as redundant were actually sequential validation stages designed to catch different types of errors. Together, they formed a safety net that prevented fraudulent transactions, caught data corruption, and ensured compliance with financial regulations. Removing them would be like removing backup parachutes, because you only need one to land safely. By the time I saw the message at 6 a.m., 3 junior developers had already started debating whether the changes made sense. They were being diplomatic, but I could read the confusion and concern in their responses. I called an emergency team meeting. 15 engineers crowded into our largest conference room, a mix of concern and curiosity on their faces. Many had worked with me for years. They knew I didn't call emergency meetings lightly. The validation logic Chloe identified isn't redundant, I explained, pulling up the relevant code architecture on the main screen. Each stage serves a specific purpose. Stage 1 validates data format and completeness. Stage 2 checks against our fraud detection algorithms. Stage 3 verifies compliance with regulatory requirements specific to each transaction's origin and destination. Stage 4 confirms the transaction against the client's account parameters and limits. But some of these checks overlap, don't they? Asked Jason, one of our newer developers. Like, if Stage 1 validates data completeness, why do we need Stage 3 to check it again? Because Stage 1 doesn't know about regulatory requirements that vary by jurisdiction. A transaction that's complete from a data structure standpoint might be missing information required by, say, German financial privacy law or California consumer protection statutes. Each stage adds a layer of verification that catches different classes of problems. Couldn't we consolidate them for efficiency? We could, I admitted. We'd save maybe 40 milliseconds per transaction. We'd also create a single point of failure and make the system exponentially harder to debug when something goes wrong. The current architecture is distributed specifically so that failures are isolated and traceable. The room fell quiet as the implications settled in. I found Chloe in her new office, the one that should have been mine, reviewing what appeared to be interior design options on her monitor. "We need to talk about the Slack message you posted last night." She looked up, her expression shifting from relaxed to defensive. I was trying to contribute. Isn't that what you want? For me to engage with the team? Engaging with the team is fine. Proposing architectural changes to critical infrastructure without understanding the implications is dangerous. I do understand the implications. We'd process transactions faster and simplify the codebase. That's good for the company. We'd also eliminate 4 separate safety mechanisms that prevent fraud, ensure compliance, and catch data corruption. That's catastrophic for the company. Chloe's eyes narrowed. Aaron, I appreciate your experience, but Dad brought me in to modernize our approach. Sometimes that means challenging conventional wisdom. This isn't conventional wisdom. It's engineering fundamentals. Payment infrastructure requires redundancy and validation because the cost of failure is enormous. Or maybe the cost of moving slowly is what's actually enormous, and we're too cautious to see it. She turned back to her monitor. I'll discuss it with Dad. He understands the strategic picture. That afternoon, Oliver called me into another meeting. This time, Chloe was already there, sitting in the chair I usually occupied during our one-on-ones. Aaron, Chloe mentioned you two had a disagreement about some technical proposals. Not a disagreement about proposals, I clarified. A necessary intervention to prevent dangerous changes to our transaction validation architecture. See, Dad. This is what I was talking about. Any suggestion I make gets framed as dangerous or reckless. Chloe's voice carried a practiced frustration, the kind that came from knowing exactly how to position herself as the reasonable party. Walk me through it, Oliver said. I explained the validation stages again, the purpose of each check, the risks of consolidation. Oliver listened with the expression of someone waiting for you to finish so he could explain why you're wrong. Here's what I'm hearing, he said when I concluded. Chloe identified potential efficiency gains. You're resistant because it's not how we've always done things. That's exactly the dynamic I brought her in to disrupt. That's not what's happening. I'm resistant because the changes would compromise system integrity. This isn't about preference or tradition. It's about maintaining the reliability our clients pay for. Our clients pay for innovation too, Chloe interjected. They want faster transactions, new features, modern capabilities. If we're so focused on not breaking anything that we never improve anything, we'll get left behind. We improve constantly, I said, fighting to keep my voice level. Last quarter alone, we reduced average transaction time by 12%, expanded to 3 new markets, and integrated with 47 new financial institutions. We did all of that without compromising reliability. 12%, Chloe repeated. Stripe reduced theirs by 30%. Stripe also had 2 significant outages in the same period, including one that lasted 4 hours and cost their clients an estimated $200 million in lost transactions. We had 0 outages. Oliver held up his hand. Both of you make valid points, but I need my leadership team aligned, not fighting about every decision. Aaron, you're the technical expert. Chloe, you're bringing strategic vision. Figure out how to work together. The false equivalence was maddening. This wasn't a clash of equally valid perspectives. This was expertise versus inexperience, caution versus recklessness, reality versus ambition. But Oliver had made his position clear. Day 12 of knowledge transfer brought the announcement I'd been dreading. Oliver sent a company-wide email officially confirming Chloe's appointment as Director of Infrastructure and Platform Development, effective immediately. The 2-week transition period was ending early because Chloe had quickly mastered the essential elements and is ready to lead. My new title would be Principal Architect, reporting to Chloe. A lateral move disguised as a promotion through the addition of the word, principal. The email praised my invaluable contributions and expressed confidence that Chloe and I would form a dynamic leadership partnership. 20 minutes later, Chloe scheduled her first director-level meeting with the infrastructure team. She opened with a presentation she'd apparently worked on all weekend. The title slide read, Accelerating Innovation, a New Vision for Infrastructure Development. I've spent 2 intensive weeks learning our systems, she began, addressing the 30 engineers packed into the room. I've identified several opportunities to modernize our approach and increase our competitive velocity. She clicked to the next slide. Initiative 1, Agile Deployment Cycles. Currently, we deploy major updates quarterly. That's unacceptable in today's fast-moving fintech landscape. Starting next month, we're moving to continuous deployment. Features go live as soon as they're code complete. I felt the room's energy shift. Several engineers glanced at me, clearly waiting for someone to state the obvious problem. Continuous deployment works for certain types of applications, I said carefully. But payment infrastructure requires extensive testing, security audits, and compliance reviews. Our quarterly cycle exists because financial regulations mandate it. Regulations mandate that we verify our systems meet requirements, Chloe countered. They don't mandate a specific timeline. We can verify faster if we build better automation. Our current automation is industry-leading. The timeline exists because compliance reviews involve external auditors who need time to examine our changes against regulatory standards. We can't automate away other organizations' processes. Not with that attitude. She smiled like she delivered a witty comeback rather than a fundamental misunderstanding of how regulated industries worked. She clicked to the next slide. Initiative 2, Streamlined Code Review. Our current code review process requires 3 approvals for any infrastructure change. That creates bottlenecks and slows development. We're moving to a single approval model with automated testing, catching any issues. Natasha, our security lead, spoke up. 3 approvals exist because infrastructure changes can have cascading effects that aren't always obvious to a single reviewer. We've caught critical bugs in second and third reviews multiple times. How many times? Chloe asked. Natasha hesitated, clearly running through mental archives. In the past year, probably 15 to 20 instances. Out of how many total code reviews? Approximately 800. So less than 3%. We're slowing down 97% of our development to catch 3% of issues. That's inefficient. That 3% includes the bug that would have exposed client financial data to potential security breaches, I said, and the one that would have caused transaction amounts to occasionally round incorrectly, which sounds minor until you realize we process 47 million transactions daily. A rounding error affecting even 1% would have meant 470,000 incorrect transactions per day. Then, we improve our automated testing to catch those issues earlier, Chloe replied. The solution isn't more manual gatekeeping. It's better automation. She wasn't wrong in theory. Better automation was always desirable, but she was proposing to remove safety measures before building the automation that would replace them, like removing a bridge before constructing the new one. The meeting continued for another 40 minutes. Each initiative followed the same pattern. Chloe proposed dramatic changes designed to increase speed. Engineers raised concerns about safety and reliability. Chloe dismissed those concerns as resistance to change. By the end, the team looked shell-shocked. That evening, my phone buzzed with messages from concerned colleagues. Natasha, is she serious about these changes? Jason, this feels dangerous. Can you talk to Oliver? Emily, our DevOps lead. I've been here 4 years. I've never seen anything like this. What do we do? I stared at the messages, feeling the weight of responsibility and the sting of powerlessness in equal measure. What could I tell them? That I'd already tried talking to Oliver? That the CEO valued his daughter's fresh perspective more than the collective expertise of engineers who'd built this infrastructure from nothing? I typed and deleted several responses before settling on, document your concerns in writing. If anything goes wrong, there needs to be a record that we raised these issues. It was the advice of someone preparing for failure rather than fighting to prevent it. Day 14, my last day of official knowledge transfer, Chloe announced her first major project. We're going to rebuild our payment processing core, she declared in our final one-on-one meeting. Current system is 5 years old. That's ancient in tech terms. We need something modern, scalable, built with current best practices. The payment processing core was the heart of everything we did. Rebuilding it would be like performing open-heart surgery on a marathon runner mid-race. Our current core processes billions in transactions monthly with 99.97% uptime, I said. What specific limitations are you trying to address? It's not about limitations. It's about technical debt and modernization. I've been talking to some developers Dad knows from his Stanford network. They're using this new framework that's supposedly revolutionary, built for cloud-native, microservices-first architecture. We already use microservices architecture. We've been cloud-native since day one. But this framework makes it easier, more intuitive, reduces development time by like 40% according to their benchmarks. What framework? She pulled up a website on her laptop. The framework had been released 4 months ago by a small startup. The documentation was sparse. The production implementations list showed exactly 3 companies, none in financial services. This is too new for payment infrastructure, I said. We need battle-tested technology, not experimental frameworks. Everything is experimental until someone takes the risk. That's how innovation happens. Innovation in payment processing happens incrementally with extensive testing. We can't gamble with other people's money. We're not gambling. We're leading. Her voice carried absolute confidence, the certainty of someone who'd never experienced catastrophic failure. Dad agrees this is the right direction. He's already approved the project budget. He approved rebuilding our payment core without consulting the infrastructure team. He consulted me. I'm the director of infrastructure. The title had been official for less than 48 hours, and she was already wielding it like a weapon. The following Monday began my new reality, reporting to someone who'd spent 2 weeks learning what I'd spent 5 years building. Chloe scheduled daily stand-up meetings at 8 a.m., apparently unaware that half our team worked until midnight handling deployments and system maintenance. The first stand-up ran 90 minutes. She wanted detailed updates on every project, asked questions that revealed gaps in her understanding, then offered suggestions that would require explaining. Again, why payment infrastructure wasn't like building a consumer app. By Wednesday, attendance at the stand-ups had dropped by a third. Engineers started scheduling client calls or urgent debugging sessions to avoid them. Chloe's response was to make attendance mandatory and start tracking who was engaged with the new vision. On Thursday, she announced the team assigned to the payment core rebuild. 3 senior developers, including our 2 most experienced engineers, plus 5 junior developers who'd been with the company less than a year. We're pulling them off current projects, I asked during the announcement. This is the priority. Everything else is maintenance. Everything else included expanding to 2 new international markets, integrating with a major e-commerce platform that represented potential $200 million in annual transaction volume, and upgrading our fraud detection algorithms to address emerging threat patterns. Those projects have contractual deadlines and significant revenue implications. Then we'll need to be creative about meeting them with reduced resources. That's how you build efficiency. Efficiency. The word had lost all meaning. By the end of week 2 under Chloe's leadership, morale had cratered. Our Slack channels, usually filled with technical discussions and occasional banter, had gone quiet. People communicated in direct messages, afraid their concerns might be flagged as not aligned with the vision. Natasha knocked on my office door during lunch on Friday. I got a job offer, she said without preamble. Google, security infrastructure team, 30% salary increase. My stomach dropped. Natasha was brilliant, a security expert who designed defense systems that had stopped dozens of attempted breaches. When do you need to decide? They want an answer by Monday. I was going to decline because I love it here, but... She trailed off, the unspoken obvious. But things have changed. Erin, I can't stay and watch her dismantle everything we built. And I definitely can't stay and be blamed when it falls apart. I understand. Do you? Because you're still here. Her voice softened. Why are you still here? It was the question I'd been asking myself every morning when my alarm went off and every evening when I finally left the office. Why was I still here? Loyalty to the team? The team was already starting to leave. Hope that Oliver would recognize his mistake. He'd shown no indication of doubt. Pride in the systems I'd built. Those systems were about to be torn apart by someone who didn't understand them. I don't know, I admitted. You're the best infrastructure architect I've ever worked with. Any company in Seattle would hire you immediately. You don't have to go down with the ship. After she left, I sat in my office, staring at the whiteboards covered in system diagrams and architectural sketches. 5 years of work. 5 years of problems solved. Crises averted, systems scaled from handling thousands of transactions daily to handling millions. I opened my email and found messages from 3 recruiters who'd contacted me in the past month. Before Chloe's arrival, I deleted them without responding. Now I flagged them for follow-up. Week 3 under Chloe's leadership brought the first major incident. She'd insisted on implementing her streamlined code review process as a pilot program for non-critical systems. Against my strong objections, Oliver had approved the pilot. The first deployment under the new single approval process went live on a Tuesday afternoon. It was supposed to be a minor update to our client dashboard, just some UI improvements. At 3:47 p.m., our monitoring system started showing anomalous database queries. The new dashboard code had a subtle bug that caused it to make redundant database calls, lots of them. Instead of 1 query per page load, it was making 17. Under normal circumstances, this would have been caught in second-level code review. Our database lead always checked for query efficiency, but under the new process, the code had been reviewed by a front-end developer who'd approved the UI changes without examining the database implications. By 4:15 p.m., database performance had degraded by 40%. Transaction processing slowed. Clients started reporting delays. I assembled the emergency response team and began rolling back the deployment. The rollback process took 23 minutes, during which we processed transactions at roughly 60% of normal speed. Total impact: $1.2 million in delayed transactions, 17 client complaints, and a very uncomfortable call with our largest client explaining why their payment processing had temporarily slowed. I wrote a detailed incident report explaining exactly what had happened and why. The single approval process had allowed a bug to slip through that our standard process would have caught. Chloe's response was to schedule a meeting about improving our monitoring systems to catch issues faster. Rather than acknowledging that removing the safety measure had directly caused the problem, Oliver's response was to ask why we hadn't built better automated testing. Neither addressed the fundamental issue. We'd removed an effective safeguard and paid the price. Natasha submitted her resignation the next day. 2 senior developers followed by the end of the week. Recruiting engineers with payment infrastructure expertise took months. We were hemorrhaging institutional knowledge faster than we could possibly replace it. I started taking calls with recruiters. Over the next 3 weeks, I received and evaluated multiple offers. Each conversation reinforced what I already knew. I was valued elsewhere, even if I wasn't valued here. The decision crystallized one evening as I sat reviewing the Payment Core rebuild timeline. 6 months to rebuild systems that had taken 3 years to develop originally, with half the senior engineering talent using unproven technology. The math didn't work, the physics didn't work. The project would fail, and everyone associated with it would be tainted by that failure. I accepted a principal engineer position at one of the major tech companies. 40% salary increase, exceptional benefits, and most importantly, leadership that understood the difference between innovation and recklessness. I submitted my resignation to Oliver and Chloe simultaneously via email on a Friday morning. Professional, concise, no explanation beyond pursuing other opportunities. Oliver didn't respond. Chloe scheduled a meeting for that afternoon. "I'm disappointed," she said when I arrived at her office. "I thought we were starting to work well together. We'd barely spoken in 2 weeks except when absolutely necessary, but I let the fiction pass. I appreciate the opportunity, but it's time for me to move on." Is this about the director position? Because Dad and I discussed possibly creating a co-director structure. It's not about titles, it's about direction. The decisions being made aren't ones I can support. The rebuild, you mean? Among other things. She leaned back in her chair, studying me. You think it's going to fail? I think it's being approached recklessly. Unproven technology, unrealistic timeline, insufficient expertise. That's a recipe for failure. Or it's a recipe for breakthrough success. That's the difference between people like you and people like me, Aaron. You see risk, I see possibility. I see both. I just weigh them differently when other people's money is on the line. Well, you won't have to worry about that much longer. Her voice carried an edge now. 4 weeks seems excessive for notice. Are you sure you need that long? I want to ensure proper documentation and knowledge transfer. How thoughtful. But given that you're not exactly enthusiastic about our new direction, I'm not sure it makes sense for you to be involved in sensitive projects. We'll probably transition your responsibilities sooner. In other words, she wanted me gone, but couldn't legally cut my notice period short. My last 4 weeks at Pinnacle were professionally lonely. I was excluded from planning meetings, left off email threads, and generally treated like I'd already left. I spent the time documenting everything I could. Architectural decisions, system dependencies, operational procedures, emergency response protocols. I compiled it all into a comprehensive wiki that would hopefully help the remaining team navigate without me. Several engineers took me to lunch during those final weeks. They asked if my new company was hiring. I passed along my recruiter's contact information. Natasha's last day was 2 weeks before mine. We got drinks after work. Think it'll survive? She asked. The company or the infrastructure? Either. The infrastructure will probably hold together for a while. It's well built. But eventually, without people who understand it, the technical debt will accumulate. Small issues won't get fixed properly. Quick patches will introduce new problems. It'll be a slow degradation rather than a sudden collapse. Unless the rebuild fails catastrophically. Unless that. We sat in silence for a moment. Do you feel guilty? Natasha asked. For leaving? Every day. But I also know I can't fix this. Chloe and Oliver have to learn the hard way, and I don't want to be there when they do. My last day at Pinnacle was March 15th, a Wednesday. I arrived early to pack my personal items and do a final check of my documentation. At 9 a.m., I had an exit interview with HR. Standard questions about why I was leaving, what could have made me stay, whether I'd recommend Pinnacle to other engineers. I gave diplomatic answers. The truth, that the CEO had handed a critical technical role to his unqualified daughter and was ignoring the catastrophic consequences, wasn't something HR could fix. At 11 a.m., I did a final walkthrough with the infrastructure team. 20 people now, 3 more had left, their replacements not yet hired. The documentation is comprehensive, I told them. Architecture decisions, system dependencies, troubleshooting guides, it's all in the wiki. If you run into something that's not documented, email me. I'm happy to help even after I'm gone. We're going to need that, Jason said quietly. Chloe announced yesterday that we're accelerating the rebuild timeline. Launch is now 4 months away instead of 6. 4 months. They'd been working for 6 weeks and had barely completed the foundational architecture. Now they were supposed to complete development, testing, security audits, and compliance reviews in 4 months. That's not feasible, I said. We told her that. She said we weren't thinking creatively enough. Creativity couldn't overcome mathematics or physics or the fundamental realities of software development. But it wasn't my problem anymore. At 1 p.m., I had my final meeting with Oliver. He'd avoided me for most of the notice period, but apparently felt obligated to at least say goodbye. "Aaron, I want you to know I appreciate your contributions to Pinnacle," he said, his tone formal. "You helped build the foundation of what we've become. I hope that foundation is maintained properly. Chloe has everything under control. In fact, the rebuild is ahead of schedule. We're already seeing the benefits of her leadership approach." Ahead of schedule? They just cut the timeline by a third because they were behind, but somehow this translated to being ahead in Oliver's mind. "I hope you're right. I know you had concerns about her experience level, but she's proven herself. The team is rallying around her vision. We're moving faster than ever. Moving faster off a cliff, maybe. I wish you and the company success," I said, meaning it despite everything. The engineers still there deserved better than what was coming. Oliver stood and extended his hand. "Good luck with the new position." We shook hands. 5 years of collaboration, late nights, crisis management, and shared success, reduced to a perfunctory handshake and corporate platitudes. I cleaned out my office, said goodbye to the remaining team members, and walked to my car carrying a box of personal items. As I drove away from Pinnacle for the last time, I felt a strange mix of relief and dread. Relief that I was escaping an increasingly toxic situation. Dread about what would happen to the people and systems I was leaving behind. I started at my new company on March 18th. The contrast was immediate and stark. Leadership that asked technical questions and listened to the answers. Engineers whose experience was valued rather than dismissed as resistance to change. Processes designed around reliability and thoughtfulness rather than speed for its own sake. I threw myself into the work, trying not to think about Pinnacle. It worked for about 3 weeks. On April 9th, I got a message from Jason. "Jason, Aaron, are you available for a quick call? Unofficial capacity. I need advice." We connected 15 minutes later. "The rebuild is a disaster," he said without preamble. "We're 5 days from the planned launch and nothing works properly. Transaction processing is buggy. The fraud detection integration keeps failing. We haven't even started compliance testing." "Have you told Chloe?" "Multiple times. She says we just need to work harder, pull together, show some commitment. We've been working 80-hour weeks. Aaron, we're not 90% of the way there. We're maybe 40%, and that's being generous." "What does Oliver say?" "He's hands off. Says Chloe is the director. She makes the technical calls. She's convinced him that everything is on track and we're just being overcautious." "Jason, you can't launch. If you deploy unstable payment processing to production, you'll have massive failures. Transactions will fail, money will go missing, clients will lose confidence." "I know, we all know. But Chloe has already announced the launch date to clients. There's a marketing campaign. Oliver gave a press interview about our revolutionary new payment infrastructure. We're locked in. Then you have to tell Oliver directly that you're not ready. Put it in writing. Get the other senior engineers to co-sign. Make it impossible to ignore." We did that yesterday. All 5 senior developers on the rebuild team signed a memo explaining the risks and recommending a delay. Chloe told Oliver we were being dramatic and resistant to pressure. He sided with her. I felt the familiar frustration rising. Then you need to protect yourself, document everything. When it fails, and it will, make sure the record shows you raised concerns. That's what Natasha said to do right before she left. Natasha was smart. "I've got interviews lined up," Jason admitted. "I can't stay for the crash landing, but I feel terrible leaving the team." "The team will understand. Anyone with options is going to leave. Anyone who stays is either trapped or hasn't realized how bad it's going to get." We talked for another 20 minutes. I gave him what advice I could, knowing it wouldn't change the outcome. After we hung up, I sat staring at my laptop, feeling the weight of what was coming. The launch was scheduled for April 14th at 9 a.m. Pacific time. I wasn't there. I was 3,000 miles away at my new job, working on actually well-planned infrastructure projects. But I couldn't stop checking my phone. At 9:17 a.m., Jason texted, "We're live. God help us." At 9:34 a.m., first transaction failures. Chloe says it's normal launch jitters. At 9:52 a.m., error rate at 12%. This is not normal. At 10:08 a.m., clients calling. Transactions are failing, some are processing twice, amounts are occasionally wrong. We're trying to roll back, but Chloe won't approve it. At 10:31 a.m., Oliver finally saw the metrics. He's freaking out. Chloe is insisting we can fix it without rolling back. At 10:45 a.m., we're rolling back, but it's going to take time. We're bleeding revenue. At 11:23 a.m., rollback complete. We're back on the old system. Total disaster. At 11:47 a.m., emergency all-hands meeting. This is going to be ugly. I put my phone down and tried to focus on work, but my mind was at Pinnacle, imagining the chaos. Jason called that evening. 7.8 million, he said. That's the preliminary estimate of lost revenue. Failed transactions, refunds for double processed payments, credits for incorrect amounts, emergency fees for expedited payment processing to fix client issues. I felt sick. How many transactions failed? About 340,000. Some were retried successfully once we rolled back, others were just lost, and we damaged client trust in ways that are harder to quantify. What did Oliver say? He's furious. Demanded to know why we launched with so many bugs. Chloe blamed the development team, said we didn't communicate the issues clearly enough. We showed him the memo we sent. All 5 senior developers explicitly stating the system wasn't ready. And he said we should have escalated more forcefully, should have refused to deploy. Basically, we're being blamed for not stopping something we had no authority to stop. That's not fair. No. But it's predictable. Jason's voice was heavy with exhaustion. 3 of the senior developers on the rebuild team resigned today, effective immediately. They're done. The infrastructure team was hemorrhaging expertise at exactly the moment they needed it most. What about you? I asked. I'm giving 2 weeks. I accepted an offer from Microsoft. I tried, Aaron, I really did, but I can't keep fighting this. No one could, you did everything right. Doesn't feel that way. Feels like I'm abandoning a sinking ship. You're escaping a sinking ship. There's a difference. The industry publications picked up the story within days. Pinnacle Financial Technologies suffers major outage during core system upgrade, read the headlines. The articles were diplomatic, using terms like growing pains and transition challenges. The engineers who'd been there knew the truth. Social media and private Slack channels told the real story. Nepotism, ignored warnings, catastrophic failure. Pinnacle's stock price, they'd gone public 6 months before I left, dropped 17% in 2 days. Oliver issued a statement taking full responsibility and promising a comprehensive review of their development processes. Chloe posted on LinkedIn about learning experiences and the importance of resilience in leadership. The engineers who'd signed the memo warning about the launch began receiving recruiter calls almost immediately. Their willingness to stand up against reckless leadership made them attractive hires. Over the next month, I watched from a distance as Pinnacle dealt with the consequences. They brought in a crisis management firm to handle client communications. They hired consultants to audit their infrastructure and development processes. They posted job listings for 12 engineering positions. And they delayed the payment core rebuild indefinitely, returning focus to maintaining the old system, the one I'd helped build, the one Chloe had dismissed as outdated. Jason sent occasional updates. Week 1, 3 more engineers gave notice. We're down to 14 people trying to maintain systems built for 30. Week 3, Oliver hired a VP of engineering. She seems competent. Chloe is furious about having adult supervision. Week 5, the VP asked to see all our documentation, told her about your wiki. She said it's the most comprehensive technical documentation she's seen. Wishes you were still here. Week 7, Chloe's role has been restructured. She's now Director of Strategic Initiatives, which appears to mean she goes to conferences and talks about innovation without touching actual infrastructure. The VP is running everything technical. Week 9, we finally stabilized, hired 6 new engineers, all senior. The VP instituted strict change management protocols. Basically, everything is back to how you ran it. I felt a complicated mix of vindication and sadness. Vindication that the problems I'd identified were real. Sadness that it had taken $7.8 million in losses and mass resignations to prove it. 3 months after I left Pinnacle, Emily reached out. She'd been one of the engineers who'd stayed, partly because she'd been promoted to lead the infrastructure team in the wake of so many departures. I wanted you to know what happened after everything settled, she said over coffee, and to say thank you. For what? The documentation you left, the wiki. When everything was falling apart and half the team was gone, that documentation was the only thing that kept us functional. New engineers could onboard, we could troubleshoot incidents. We didn't lose institutional knowledge completely because you'd captured so much of it. I'm glad it helped. More than helped. The new VP said it probably saved the company. She's in the process of making comprehensive documentation a requirement for all projects. Emily smiled. She also said you're welcome to come back anytime. She's heard the whole story, knows exactly why you left. I appreciate that, but I'm happy where I am. I figured, just wanted you to know the door's open. She paused. And I wanted to apologize. For what? For not supporting you more when Chloe took over. You were raising legitimate concerns, and a lot of us stayed silent because we were afraid of being seen as resistant or negative. If more of us had backed you up, it wouldn't have changed anything, I said gently. Oliver had made his decision. Chloe was staying. No amount of engineer pushback would have altered that. Maybe. But you shouldn't have had to fight alone. We talked for another hour. Emily filled me in on the current state of things. The payment core rebuild had been officially canceled. The new VP had reviewed the codebase and deemed it unsalvageable. They'd returned focus to incrementally improving the existing infrastructure, exactly the approach I'd been advocating all along. Chloe's new role kept her away from technical decisions. She attended industry events, networked with potential clients, and gave presentations about Pinnacle's vision. She was good at that, the performance aspects of leadership, just not the substance. Oliver had become more cautious about major changes. The failed launch and resulting losses had shaken his confidence in his own judgment. Client relationships were slowly recovering. The immediate crisis had been expensive, but Pinnacle's fundamental technology, the infrastructure I'd helped build, was solid enough to rebuild trust. We're going to be okay, Emily concluded. It was rough, really rough, but we're stabilizing. I'm glad. Looking back now, 2 years after walking out of Pinnacle, I see the experience with clarity that only distance can provide. I didn't fail by leaving. I succeeded by recognizing when a situation was untenable and having the courage to walk away. I didn't abandon the team. I protected myself and gave them a model for setting boundaries and valuing their own expertise. I didn't lose. I made space for the next chapter of my career, one where my experience is valued and my contributions recognized. The systems I built at Pinnacle are still running. The infrastructure I architected still processes billions in transactions. The documentation I created still guides new engineers. That work mattered, it still matters. But I matter more than any job, any company, any system. That's the lesson I took from training the CEO's daughter for 2 weeks, and then walking out when she became my boss. Sometimes the most professional thing you can do is recognize when you're not valued and find somewhere you will be. Sometimes loyalty to yourself is more important than loyalty to a company that doesn't respect your expertise. Sometimes walking away isn't quitting, it's choosing your own worth over someone else's poor judgment. The choice to leave Pinnacle wasn't impulsive, it was strategic, it was necessary, it was an act of self-respect. I'm at a company now where technical expertise drives decisions, where experience is respected, where titles are earned through competence rather than connections. I work with brilliant people on meaningful problems. I build systems that serve millions of users. I mentor junior engineers who remind me of myself 5 years ago, eager, uncertain, hungry to learn. I sleep well at night knowing that my professional standards haven't been compromised. That's worth more than any director title at a company that didn't value what I brought. The fintech industry is small. I still hear occasional updates about Pinnacle. They're doing well under Amanda's leadership. They're hiring carefully and growing sustainably. They've rebuilt their reputation with clients. Oliver learned expensive lessons about nepotism and the importance of matching roles to capabilities. Chloe found work that suits her strengths and stopped trying to be someone she isn't. The engineers who left found good positions at companies that value them. Everyone moved forward, including me. And when I look back at that moment in the conference room, my finger hovering over the send button while chaos erupted around me, I'm proud of the choice I made. I chose myself, I chose my integrity, I chose a future where my expertise would be valued. That decision changed everything. If this story resonated with you, whether you've faced similar situations or just appreciate honest accounts of workplace dynamics, subscribing helps build a community that values real experiences over sanitized success stories, complexity over simple narratives, and integrity over easy answers. We're on our way to 5,000 subscribers, and having you as part of this journey matters. Thank you for listening.